Hi, everyone. I'm Kerry Cassidy from Project Camelot and have had some computer issues here. So it's been an interesting beginning. So I am here with David Sereda and Jimmy Blanchette, and we're going to have a fascinating discussion, I'm sure. And first of all, let's introduce you guys for those that don't know who you are. So go ahead, Jimmy.
Hi, everyone, and thanks, Kerry, for the opportunity. Jimmy Blanchette, I am a scientist. I'm a chemist. I'm born and raised in Canada and moved to the United States in the early 2000s, and I've been living in California for 20 years and now in Arizona. For the purpose of this interview, I've been an amateur radio operator since childhood with a passion for building antennas and communication. And so that's going to be a big part of what we're going to be talking about today, about human-initiated contact.
Yeah, I met Jimmy getting close to a year ago now, and I was immensely fascinated with his approach and technique in making ET contact. And in an actual communication system detection of the ET phenomena is a completely void area. If you look at the recent congressional hearing on UFOs, there were some questions about whether these things communicate. And they said, no, basically they don't. And I was kind of laughing, thinking, well, you haven't met Jimmy Blanchette yet, and you haven't seen his work and his discovery. And I believe I was formerly director of the Tesla Foundation in Los Angeles. I was appointed by Bogdan Castle-Magwitch, an MIT PhD in physics, who immigrated to the United States from Yugoslavia, just like Tesla did. And I worked at Advanced Physics Corporation, High Energy Micro Devices in California, and I was around in the company of Glenn Seaborg, who chaired the Atomic Energy Commission under Kennedy, Johnson, and Nixon, who was to authorize all nuclear testing in Nevada and nuclear rocket sciences, and Murray Gell-Mann, who's considered one of the greatest physicists since Einstein, Norman Rostocker, and many, many others. I mean, I got to actually talk to these guys about UFOs, believe it or not, in my almost 20 years in my association with Bogdan Magwitch on a benign form of nuclear fusion called helium-3 fusion. So I got to see how fusion worked, how very advanced detection systems worked in the military. And when I looked at in studying all of Tesla's patents, there was a phenomena in the early days in Tesla radio where it was published in Collier's Weekly, where both Tesla and Marconi, and actually the US Supreme Court ruled June 21st, 1943, that Tesla, Lodge, and Stone were the true fathers of radio, and Marconi was using Tesla's patents to broadcast across the Atlantic. But both Tesla and Marconi came across this phenomenon in radio that sounded like Morse code. There were these super fast dashes that were appearing during radio receptions, and they believed they were extraterrestrial, and they were both quite mystified by what they were. And when I first learned about Jimmy's work, there's this very similar phenomena happening in the amateur radio bands where these super fast dashes appear. We were able to rule out Morse code and determine that they were sending in numbers, frequencies with numerical values that were incredibly profound. So Jimmy built this very powerful harmonic antenna array, and he was sending out signals to 75 to even 250,000 watts. And last August 8th on Lionsgate, I designed a bunch of frequencies based on pyramid math, and Jimmy had prior received these 8 very sacred numbers, and we sent them out, bounced this huge signal off the moon, and the center of the reception of the signal on Earth was the Great Pyramid of Egypt. We had a guy filming with his iPhone the Great Pyramid, and we ran that photography during the moment of the moon bounce on Lionsgate through an algorithm software, and we could actually see the aura coming off of the Great Pyramid in this intense orange and turquoise bands, which was proving that the pyramid was responding to radio frequency reception. And so that opened up, my research with Jimmy and continuing to do a whole bunch of transmissions and receptions. And the third phenomenon that started occurring is Jimmy set up infrared cameras, night vision cameras at the end of his antenna array in northern Arizona, and right in concert with these transmissions, UFOs would appear at the end of the antenna array, and these in the infrared bands very quickly. They'd pop in and they'd be there for a few frames per second, and then they'd be gone. But these things had real structure, and we noticed that they would appear in arrangements and ratios that were golden ratio and golden ratio squared. So we knew that the numbers we were getting in the amateur radio bands were not fictional, not random, meaningless numbers, chitter chatter. They were very profound. And Jimmy's going to give us a slideshow presentation. And also the UAP UFOs appearing at the end of the antenna super fast are not unlike the way the military sees these things coming in at incredible speeds and stopping on a dime and zipping out. So take it away from there, Jimmy.
Thank you, David. Yeah, and just to clarify, the equipment I have is is pretty powerful. It's capable of producing about 250,000 watts on 432 megahertz, and about 150,000 watt on the 144 megahertz. So at this kind of power, the radio wave will physically literally reach the deepest corner of the solar system and go far beyond, obviously. And so this transmission essentially has, pretty big reach by in itself. I have, over the years, accumulated a lot of material, video material specifically, from my own experience, but also from other experiencers with whom I had shared the technique, essentially using these radios. The technique was, scaled down from, I adapted the technique to small handheld radios that people can buy for very low, low amount of money, and use this as a technological aid, essentially, to initiate contact. And so I do have accumulated many video testimonials as well. The technique has been tried and validated as far as Antarctica, and I do have a clip of that in the montage I'm going to show in a minute. And so, and I do have also many slides to support the discussion, so I'll be happy to share that. So maybe, if that's okay, we could start with the short video montage. Well, it's short; it lasts about 15 minutes, but we'll provide a powerful visual, I think, to the audience to see what we're talking about and what kind of results we're getting with this communication, and what kind of interactions are happening also with electronic equipment and so on. So I think that will go a long way to provide that visual, and then I have many slides that I'll be happy to share after to go through the details of that.
Okay, very good. Now I'm going to have some questions, obviously, about your technique and various things, but I think you should go ahead and show the video, and then we'll go through that afterwards.
Okay. Okay, perfect.
So I'm sorry, everyone. I affect my my camera, and there's no reason for my camera to be acting like this right now, but there's nothing I can do about it. So I'm just, looking like this. So sorry about that.
You look as bright as the sun, Kerry. Like you got a light shining off of you.
It's fairly dark in my room, but I don't know. So it has happened before to me. So I've tried every adjustment that I have, and I don't know, I might come back into focus eventually. Let's just wait and see.
Okay, so the video is ready to go. We'll start it now. If there's any issue with sound or, the picture, let me know. So here it is.
A good friend of mine who lives about 20 miles away, Jimmy Blanchette, he developed a way to communicate with extraterrestrials using a radio telescope. And he has one in his backyard that's massive, 150 kilowatts. Wow. And it blasts. So he encodes a message into an audio file, and he aims it at the moon and blasts the moon, and that thing reflects everywhere. And we actually had him create a special message for the harmonic convergence. It's an image that he encodes in the audio message, and you can decode it with an audio analyzer right on your cell phone. I'll show it to you later. We have this up on the website.
So we just transmitted Jimmy's message, and all three of the transmitters lit up simultaneously. We just got to the house. We're making dinner, and we are.
Way over there.
Is it going off right now?
Yeah.
Magnetometer's going off.
Like crazy.
So we are getting activity. Oh, magnetometer is going off the charts. Oh my gosh.
I have got like
Oh my God, this is really going off the charts.
goosebumps. This is crazy, so good.
Oh my God, all four of them.
Oh my lord.
This is crazy.
Look at that.
We got responses.
Thank you. As soon as
Thank
you
you
transmitted.
very much.
We love you. As soon
Thank
as you
you.
transmitted the message.
I think there's more than one up there.
Thank you.
There's two different ones flashing us.
30. Wow.
Wow.
Yeah, it's hovering now.
Whoa.
Is there anyone who hasn't seen it?
We all see it.
Whoa, they're just signaling.
33.
Whoa, that's bright. Whoa, thank you.
There's two flashing.
Hi everyone, I'm Mark Kaprowski, and I am standing on the rooftop of my building in Tokyo, Japan. Our contact group has been using the radio contact modality now for about 2 years with really great results. So get yourself a radio, give it a try. I think you'll be impressed by the results. So good luck with that, and goodbye from Tokyo.
Hi, my name is Linda Aurora. I'm from the Netherlands. I went to Antarctica in 2019, January, February, and took one of my radios with me. I have 3 radios. I know Jimmy for some years now, and Jimmy taught us how to work with the radios and the frequencies. We worked in a very small group. We are still working in a very small group, and see how the radios respond and what happens when you use the radios or when the radios respond, what you can see. Sometimes you can see very fast Ufos flying over. And this next picture, I show you that something was flying from down, left, going to the right, in the middle, going up, and going all the way up to the left and disappears. So I changed it a bit to show you how the craft or the UFO was flying. And all the same moment with the radios. So that moment that the radios went off, I took live pictures on my iPhone, and later on my computer or iPad I was watching it, and then I could see what was going on in the sky when the radios went off. So there's a lot of activity when that happens.
Could you come towards me if you're here, please? Okay, I'm going to sit down. I'm going to sit down here. And if anybody feels inclined, they can come. Thank you. I see you all now. Here we are. Oh, beautiful. Beautiful, thank you. Oh, that is just the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. your energy in front of me, manifesting so in such a beautiful way.
I got to the park. Both radios were very quiet, and from the moment that I made a transmission, the reply came through almost immediately. So it's a beautiful day here. I have made a request for a day sighting if it is safe and appropriate, and so we'll see if they can make it happen safely.
When we were having all this event in Big Arbor, Wisconsin, a lot of radioactivity, a lot of contact, and during the meditation, I asked if they could do anything to help me with this pain. Within 24 hours, it disappeared, and I thought, oh, wow, this is great, you know, and I'm thinking, oh, maybe it's in my head, I'm not feeling anything. It's never come back. I mean, that is empirical evidence. It does not go away, something that's been there for over a decade. It disappeared.
Oh,
Yes.
okay, that was lovely. Thank you so much. I'm sure people would enjoy that, and so they can actually watch it again, right? Because it's on your YouTube channel, and I put the link on the page for this interview as well, so you can. It's actually embedded in that page now, so you can go to my website and watch it there again. You know, because people might want to see it more than once. So comments, whichever one wants to start.
You want to go, David?
Yeah, well, the first thing I want to say is when Jimmy and I were doing the moon bounce on Lionsgate last August the 8th, something had already started with Jimmy. And there was this mathematical formula that was appearing that explains the relationship between the speed of light in metric, 299,792, 458 meters per second, and the frequency 432 and 144, and it was this we were formulating it, and it's like this download came into our consciousness. Jimmy started it on his own when we made the very intention to do the moon bounce, and during the actual transmission, when we sent the signal to the moon, I was holding my handheld radio tuned to the same frequency as the transmission in Arizona. When any two frequency oscillators are at the same frequency, you're in communication with each other. You're in a symbiosis, you're in a synchronicity. And so this tremendous bliss was coming in, and suddenly we purified this perfect, massive discovery that would have blown Einstein's mind. I mean, it was so perfect. And that's part of Jimmy's slideshow presentation. So I want to demonstrate how it's not just about the UFOs appearing. And when you see the triangular formations, they're in perfect golden ratio from our perspective to them only. Meaning if you were over here, somewhere else on the planet, they wouldn't appear in that perfect golden ratio arrangement, which means it was meant for us to see. The sender saw them in the golden ratio pattern. Nobody else would have seen them in that ratio. And you notice they do it really fast and they're gone. And that is consistent with the Navy. I mean, one thing that was really lacking in the current congressional hearing on UFOs is they eliminated all the pilots, all the radar data. And I'll give you one example, and Louis Elizondo confirmed this for me. It was also in the press when the UFO on radar dropped from above 80,000 feet to sea level in 0.78 seconds. That's 66 to 68,000 miles per hour. Now, none of our missiles can go faster than the Minuteman, which is 18,000 miles an hour. The Saturn V rocket to the moon only in deep space could do 24,000 miles an hour. And our fighter jets are operating around 1,500 miles an hour. Some of them can reach 2,000 momentarily, a little faster than that. The SR-7, it was the Lockheed high altitude reconnaissance jet broke all speed records at like Mach 5, which is 3,700 miles an hour approximately. So when you're seeing something going 67,000 miles an hour, this is what I'm saying. And if the camera's going to catch it, and according to Elizondo, this thing stops on a dime right above sea level, and then it takes off. For a camera to capture movement like that, you're going to get it and it's going to be gone. So don't think that things that are flashing at the end of the antenna rate very quickly are meaningless. This is how these things move and how they operate. But I think the most profound part of what Jimmy's receiving, and I think he's been doing this since the year 2007, or possibly earlier, this mathematical, these 8 numbers he received, and then this mathematical proportion of 432, 144, and the speed of light. Do you have slides on that, Jimmy?
Yes, I do have a lot of slides, so maybe I can share.
Because that happened, I mean, the moment we set the intention to do the Great Pyramid moon bounce, and then it became perfectly clear right during the transmission. Jimmy and I are doing the math, and we're like, oh my God, this is so perfect. This explains time, it explains harmonics of where we are inside of time in reference to the speed of light and the sacred 432 and 144.
Are you seeing the slide,
Yep.
David?
Yeah, we see it.
Yes.
Okay, so the slide you're talking about, I had that already included in there, so we can cover it now, I guess, since we're talking about it. So this is go ahead, David. This is a slide of the experiment we did. I do have the video footage also of what happened in Giza, at Giza, of the pyramid.
Right. So this is the moment I started working with Jimmy. He's been doing this stuff for years before him and I came together. So that just kind of gives you a time perspective.
Do you want me to show? I will show the video, maybe.
Yeah, show
what took place. So the intent here, let me explain a bit the diagram here, what we're looking at. So the technique was essentially to beam a powerful beam of radio wave and use the moon as a passive reflector. And this is a technique that's used by a very, very small community of amateur radio operators on the Earth that are equipped with very powerful radio equipment like I am here. There's just a few of us on the Earth who have the equipment to do that. But essentially the technique consisted here, the experiment, to bounce off radio wave of the moon at very specific frequencies which were chosen to resonate with the Earth grid and the Great Pyramid at Giza. And so this is what David and I, the experiment we conducted on the 21st of August. And that maybe I can play here the exactly.
So we did that on August 8th. We did that on
August 8th, yes.
Yeah.
August 8th, that's right. That was the Lion's Gate. And as David mentioned, it was very interesting because in the days preceding the transmission, during and after, we had a lot of inspiration, let's call it this way. And so that's part of the experience we had here. So let me show you the video here. And the gentleman that David was in contact with was equipped with a special technology called Eulerian video magnification technology, which is capable of detecting frequencies in the Schumann resonance range. So in this case, the Schumann resonance was of course, in the 6 to 9 hertz. And this is essentially what we're going to see is what was emitted at these frequencies, at the Schumann resonance frequencies. Now, I want to point out, though, that there has to, I don't want to make a formal claim on this yet because we need to do a lot of work and due diligence to validate this, with blanks and repeat the experience and so forth, right? So what goes, this kind of work requires, due diligence, but we're going to show essentially what happened during the transmission and then just to give an idea here. So.
You see the bright orange and turquoise bands coming off the pyramid. The software detects energy changes that are very tiny and amplifies them visually. So accordingly, during the moon bounce to the pyramid is responding in the turquoise and orange band emissions coming off of it. So the photography is the guy in Giza who did this for me as a favor at the exact time of the moon bounce.
And let me go back to the slide. So this is an example here of information that came through actually during the transmission. I have that on video. David and I were recording on Zoom actually our discussion, and I do have a short clip of it of what happened. But essentially, that was very fascinating because, and it goes back into a bit my story. And I'm going to get back to the slide earlier to show how it all started. But the two main frequencies that I've been using is based on the fundamental harmonic of light 144, which we're going to talk about extensively in a little bit, and 432, which is also highly significant, which is everywhere in nature. And we have slides about this as well.
And that was the transmission frequency, by the way. I mean,
correct. So these two frequencies.
Inadvertently, 432 megahertz. So it's the speed of light in metric is equal to 432 times 10 to the 5th over 144.1. And Jimmy, most of his contacts with the ETs interface through the amateur band on the handheld radios is happening at 144.1 and 432 megahertz. So the fact that the speed of light would be a perfect harmonic to those two numbers is utterly mind-blowing. I mean, this is a mathematical formula, and we were purifying this live during the moon bounce transmission of last Lion's Gate.
Yeah, and the match is, that's what was quite fascinating, is the match is at 99.99978% of the speed of light. So, the odds that this is happening by chance or accident is just very, very, very slim at this point.
And the speed of light is when it was measured in Irvine, California by the very famous scientist in the Michelson-Morley experiment, Michelson. The speed of light was not absolutely the same every time they measured it. It had a tiny deviation every single time. So it's actually not a constant.
Yeah. So if that's okay, I will get back a bit to the earlier slide here to give a bit some background on the technique itself, how it all started, and I'll be obviously happy to answer any question, obviously, and explain a bit the physics of it, because the physics is not that complex, at least of the contact protocol. so let me show the slide here. So it started really, my interest in moon-bound communication started in 2013. I had been in amateur radio all my life, and I had never heard about moon-bound communication. But when I heard about it for the first time, I said, there's no way in the world that I'm not going to try this. I'm going to try this. This is too fascinating technically, and it was a very interesting challenge to me. So for the better part of 2013 to 2017, I worked on building antennas better and bigger and so forth to enable this mode of communication. And we have a bit of picture here of how it is done. It's simply to use the moon as a passive reflector. To reflect very powerful beams of radio waves, and we can establish two-way communication this way. This technique was actually developed during the Second World War as a communication technique. There was obviously no satellite or no internet at the time. And so this was a very convenient way to make intercontinental communications, in a very reliable way. But now with the advance of the computer and technology, we're able to do this more on a amateur stance, if you will. And so from 2014-16, I worked on this special antenna array called TARP, or I call TARP Triangular Array Rotatable Polarity Antenna. I had the opportunity to write a couple of scientific papers about it. It was a special design with a triangular configuration, which is producing a very pure radiation pattern. And the other technical, characteristics to it that I will not get into, but I was fortunate enough that the antenna made the cover page of that magazine specialized in VHF and UHF microwave communication. And then in 2017, that's where I became more interested in human-initiated contact. I had heard about it. I had heard about, there's all kind of modalities that exist out there in C5 and Rama and so forth. There was a lot of different groups, doing this work. And I was very highly interested. I became very intrigued. I was myself, convinced that we're not alone. I mean, this was not even a question to me, but, to get to that level of making contact was obviously a different step. And so I thought that, it will be to try this. It will make sense to use the equipment and capability that I had put together to try to use this as a catalyst. And so in 2017, April 2017, I developed a binary code message, a homemade binary code message, which contain, the coordinates and the time and date where I will be on a given night. So I had located a place on Google Earth where I will be, going on a specific day, and just to try. But my first night actually was not even to make real contact. It was more to scout a location, a site. I had at the time the intention to put a little group together, do some kind of contact work with a little group. And so I was trying to locate the site. And so I had located that site, but going to scout the site, I made this broadcast, essentially broadcasting my intent to be at that specific location on time and date. I do have a few seconds video here, if that's okay. I will play it, of this transmission, so we can see a bit how it sounds like. So this is exactly the binary code message that was broadcasted at the end of April 2017. I'm not going to play it all, but it's essentially, as I said, the message contained location, time, date, and intention for contact. So that night on May 1st, 2017, so I drove to that location, which was deep into Los Padres National Park in California. Deep enough in the valley where there's just, it was quite remote. There's no cellular signal there. It's far away from, human installation. So it was purposely chosen to avoid any, light pollution, obviously, but also interference that may be happening, from human installation and so forth. And to my surprise, so I got to the site, and maybe 20 minutes after getting to the site, I said, okay, I'm just gonna sit down and relax and maybe try to meditate a bit, enjoy the sceneries. It was a beautiful place with a beautiful lake that I had in front of me. And immediately when I sat down and put the radio on the rooftop of my car, the radio started interacting. And it started interacting in a way that I had never seen before. And I do have a short video here that shows, what the interaction looked like. So let me just play here. So on that first night, I did not record it because when the interaction was happening with the radio, first of all, I was not expecting anything to happen. And I didn't, at the time, I didn't realize that the interaction with the radio was an actual interaction from non-human intelligence. There's no way in the world as a scientist that I would have concluded that this was an ET reply, right? Without eliminating all possibilities of false positive and doing the homework. So I didn't click at the moment, but just to give an example, this recording is a recording of a few days after, but it's very similar, close to identical to what happened on the day of, call it the day of first contact. So here it is.
It's 2:16 in the morning. The radio is very active right now.
So it's a very sharp interaction, very modulated. And again, I had been using this radio equipment for many months. I've made satellite communication and so on, and I had never seen the radio behave this way.
Remember,
especially, yeah.
It's important to note that Jamie's radio is tuned to 144.1 megahertz, which is one of the three numbers in the formula. 432 to 144.1 equals the speed of light in metric. But what's more important is the blips you're hearing on the radio. There is no radio frequencies coming in on the radio. We use advanced radio frequency meters held next to the radios. There's magnetic phenomena, but it's not like somebody sending us Morse code on a radio frequency band, because if you hold up one of these tri-field meters, which can see up to upwards of 8-point-something gigahertz, nothing is coming in. So the fast bursts you're seeing actually contain numbers. They contain numerical values, which he'll get into later. So it's very important to know that when you're seeing, some people say, oh, that's just somebody, messing with you or sending you Morse code or something. No, it isn't. There's no radio frequencies coming into the radio when the radios are doing that.
Exactly, and that's an important point. These interactions, although I transmit it with radio wave, what is triggering the radio is not radio wave. The radio wave is not triggering the radio. It's some other form of energy. And we've done many tests. I've done many tests using Faraday cage, for instance, that doesn't let a radio wave go in or out. And clearly, these interactions are not driven by radio wave. It's driven by another form of energy. And so what happened, just briefly here to that story, I went back home and the radio was interacting. I didn't make the connection, to be honest with you. I was a bit annoyed because the radio, I said, what's going on here? Maybe it's getting too cold outside. It was, it's getting chilly outside. I said, there must be something with the electronic or something. And so I took the radio, went back home, and I had found a site. I was happy about the site that I had found for future contact work. But I took the radio and I was intrigued. And so during the following days, I kept the radio on me. I just clipped it on my belt under my shirt. And I said, look, if there was any kind of interference or something triggering the radio that's man-made or the radio is just, going berserk, it should happen in town, right? Where there's interference, there's Wi-Fi everywhere, cell towers and so on. So I kept the radio on me for a few days, as much as I could, and amazingly, nothing happened. The radio was absolutely, completely silent. And so that was very interesting. I repeated the experience 2 weeks later. I again sent an invitation message again, using the same protocol, same strategy. I blasted it throughout the solar system with my antenna system, and went back to the site, and immediately almost the same thing started happening, the same kind of interaction on the radio. And then I started realizing really what was happening. And this is really how this whole story started. And from there, I bought a night vision camera, and it just snowballed from there. I had a lot of high strangeness, and kept doing this contact work almost every weekend for several weeks at the time. And I was doing it alone, by the way, because putting a group together was not easy and people don't show up. So it ended up being a very personal experience initially for me. And so I went back and that's how it started. And so from there, I started having a lot of different sightings in the sky that I recorded to my video camera. These interactions on the radio from that moment, from 2017, I have never stopped. They are still happening as we speak today. So these interactions are still happening. And maybe I'd like also just to demystify the physics of it. Most people don't know that, but a simple handheld radios, like folks can buy at their local electronic shop, when you transmit with that, the signal will go as far as the moon and beyond. Although the signal may travel just a few miles on Earth because there's obstacles and the Earth is curved and so forth, there's limitation as to how far the signal will go. When we look at free space communication in space, the signal will go extremely far. And as an example, for instance, in 2014, China sent a probe to the moon and back. It was called a 4M mission, and that probe was equipped with a small transmitter of 1 watt only and a very small vertical antenna, as we can see on the picture here, the representation of that probe that went to the moon and back. And throughout the trip, as this probe was going to the moon and back, this probe was transmitting telemetry and messages. And the amateur radio community on the Earth that had the large equipment like I have were able to receive and decode these transmissions along the way as the probe was going to the moon and back. And we see here to the bottom left some of the example of telemetry and decodes that took place. Actually, this is not from me, this is from another amateur radio who captured this. So this mission was well known, but this is a very good demonstration to prove and demonstrate that these transmissions we're making, even at low power, will go very far. So people out there don't know, but they can have their voice heard in space very easily and heard by this non-human intelligence. I should point out also that, let me go back to the slide here. So let me go back to the slide briefly here. I don't want to deviate. So the physics is pretty straightforward, how it works and what's possible to do. So it's now we can just imagine when we use a larger radio station like I have here, capable of deploying over 250,000 watts on 432 megahertz and on 144 megahertz, 150,000 watts. The signal will travel very, very far deep in space, and in this case will reach any part of our solar system and go far beyond. And obviously, we're talking about very backward man-made technology. So one can just imagine what these advanced civilizations have in terms of technology and how far they can detect the signal. And if we look at the quantum entanglement aspect of it, as soon as the information is transmitted on these frequencies, this energy is quantum entangled and can be, probably captured and received, far beyond anything we can just imagine. This is an example here of a message. This is a recent message that I created, the latest generation, if I will say here, and David participated to this one actually. We see at the bottom left here is a physical or a text message that's encoded in binary code. And on the upper section of that message contains sacred geometry, some mathematics. All the coordinates that we see in this message here are the coordinates of ancient sacred sites on the Earth, which are perfectly aligned like an equator. Of course, the pyramid at Giza is one part of it. Easter Island, Angkor Wat, also the vestiges in Mali, the pyramid in South America. So these sides are perfectly lined up like an equator, and cover a band of only 100 kilometers wide. And so these are the coordinates of these sides. We see here the formula that David and I talked about earlier that came through during the Lionsgate transmission is mentioned there, and also then the 144 code and Flower of Life, which we're going to discuss in a minute here. What's embedded also in that message is an entire symphony from Mahler. It's symphony number 5 Adagietto that's encoded. And at the end, David and his children's recorded a voice. Do you want to comment on that, David? On that?
Yeah,
I
just had my children saying, calling all angels, and they were laughing. And so their voices went out as part of the signal, as well as some of my wife's songs, musical songs that she created before she died. Actually, my wife died the day after the Lionsgate transmission, which was another synchronicity. And Paul Hellyer died the day of the transmission, Kerry. Paul Hellyer.
Very interesting. Yeah.
He died right when we were doing this. So he went out on the beam. It's really incredible synchronicities.
What is the, longitude, latitude? What is the actual line? You do know what that is that you're talking about? I was forgetting, but that the Pyramid of Giza and all those things are on which?
Well, the Pyramid of Giza's north latitude is an expression of the speed of light with the decimal moved over. It's 29. So the speed of light in metric is 299, 792, 458, but it measures that 29,9799 instead of 792. And so it's so perfect. In fact, the north face of the Great Pyramid is absolutely perfect. And there's a huge discussion I could go into right on that. So why is the Great Pyramid situated at the speed of light? And actually, as a reception, the way I take my handheld radio, I put a frequency meter in front of it that's digital. So it gives me 2.2 decimals of accuracy. And I've seen in those chirps, you hear those little fast bursts on the radio, it converts to a numerical value equal to the north latitude of the Great Pyramid perfectly. So why would that come in on my radio if it was just somebody messing around with you? Why would I get that number? And I've gotten that number multiple times, an incredible amount of times. And that led me to an even deeper study on why are they sending me the north latitude coordinate of the Great Pyramid of Egypt. And remember also from the Navy pilot data on the USS Princeton, Sean Cahill, who is a captain, and Louis Elizondo noted on the radar with Kevin Day, the radar operator, that these UFOs disappeared on radar just north of Guadalupe Island in the Baja, which is the same north latitude as the Great Pyramid. Because the north latitude of the Great Pyramid, if you go around the planet, it goes just north of Guadalupe Island, where this portal, they actually described them literally on binoculars. Sean Cahill's describing this. The UFOs are going counterclockwise, one by one, disappearing through this portal at the same north latitude. So why would that number keep coming in on my radio? I've gotten it several times. I have a slide on this also that shows the mathematics of it in terms of why it's happening there.
But what is the the significance of the speed of light? Now, I was told that the speed of light was actually just an estimate. They don't even, that it's not necessarily correct. Have you heard that?
Well, it's not. Again, I mentioned this earlier. Michelson, who was part of the Michelson-Morley experience, they built this vacuum tunnel in Irvine, California. And when they were measuring the speed of light in a vacuum, it deviated ever so slightly. However, even Nikola Tesla filed a patent for a form of alternating current powered radio that went 1.618 times the speed of light, which is a multiple of the golden ratio. And he actually filed the patent on that. So that doesn't mean the speed of light as we measure it is within tolerance of the exact number of the location of the Great Pyramid of Egypt. But that doesn't mean there's not faster than light energies. And also quantum entanglement, Einstein, his research proved it circumvents the speed of light completely, that they're signaling in quantum entangled systems that is instantaneous over vast distances. So therefore there's a higher function than the speed of light as well.
Yeah. Totally. I do have so the next section here, there is information contained in the sightings and interaction, as we mentioned. I'd like to show some evidence of it. One of the most probably prominent or almost spectacular piece of evidence is this called the golden ratio triangular craft, which is this very unique structure. And actually, when we had the first sighting, David is the first one who noticed that, you know, there was a golden ratio function here in the sightings that we had observed in early December. And this manifestations occurred after that 3 additional times, so 4 times in total. And
you're way beyond chance. And again, this would only be an arrangement of golden ratio, as Jimmy will demonstrate, between the observer and the observed, meaning this was meant for us. Nobody else, somewhere else in New Jersey, would see it in the same ratio.
Exactly. So just taking a just basic printout of the screenshot that I was able to take and doing relative measurements, as we see here on the upper right side. What's amazing about this sighting is that if we take any side of this triangle and we divide by any other sides, we always get either the golden ratio or the golden ratio squared. So for instance, if we take that C side, 21.35 centimeter, we divide by the B side, we get the golden ratio at 99.21% accuracy. If we take the B side and we divide by the smallest side, the A side in red here, we again get the golden ratio at a very high accuracy, 99.76%. And finally, if we take the long side, the C side, and divide by the smallest side, the A side, we get the golden ratio squared. So this shape obviously is not an accident, it contains information. And that was the first time I saw that shape. By the way, I don't know, David, if you've ever seen this shape, but I didn't even know there was a triangle that could produce a golden ratio in any proportion. So I'll be curious to talk to folks who know about more sacred geometry.
There's no way this is random chance. And again, this is happening super fast and consistent with how fast these things move in and out of their location.
Exactly. And the same measurements here we see. This is a different day. This is a different sightings, but the same technique was used. And this time again, golden ratio was confirmed at very high accuracy. This time even higher accuracy, 99.98, 99.94, 99.96. So these sightings were clearly meant to tell us something. And that's going to lead to the third part of this presentation, which we're getting into. And if okay, I can show briefly what these sightings of these triangular crafts are. I do have a brief extract of it. Sure. If that's okay.
Sure.
So let me advance it to where it's. Okay, so this is the part where we see this manifestation of the golden ratio. We saw one earlier, and so here's the other ones that took place here.
So it's transmitting towards Sirius.
Yeah.
See how fast that is? Oh my God.
This one was towards the Orion Belt, Christmas night.
Perfect.
Can I ask you, do you think that is, do you think those are 3 separate craft?
That's a really good question, Kerry. If they would probably have to be 3 separate craft, because their orientation between observer and observed could not be arranged perfectly if they were one solid craft, because they would have to tilt at such a perfect angle.
But what would would there, could you estimate the size? Would you have any idea whatsoever if it was one craft? Just curious.
Well, if it was one craft, that's something in the order of the Phoenix Lights, right?
The question is, and really it's a great question. the question is how far it is, right? If we will have the distance, we could calculate by trigonometry, we could calculate the size. There's no point of reference there. It will be during daytime, where there's clouds and things like that, and we see that it's, in front of the clouds or behind them, that gives us an indication, and we could make some calculation based on that. In this case, there's just no way, there's no point of reference. If we will have a radar or something that will pick up a distance, we could, but
okay, but
unfortunately
you can't say the distance from you to these points of light or craft, and yet can you tell how far, if there are three, let's say, and there is something else there, I get sort of, I don't know if that's a fourth, and maybe right next to it a fifth, I don't know, but if you take those three, are you able to say how far they are from each other? Or not? You can't tell that either?
No, I can't.
You can't tell that either, but you can say one thing, ratio remains the same no matter how far they are away or what the scale or size of the presentation is, it's always the same.
Yeah.
Mathematically, your golden ratio doesn't change. I can shrink the image down or blow it up, and my ratio, which is just simple division, is always the same.
So the message is being conveyed, what I'm getting at is that the message is being conveyed by somehow the craft are in connection with each other, even though they're probably quite distant from each other, yeah?
Right. They're probably quite distant from each other because they're probably fairly far out.
Not just with one set of beings or whatever, or one being in a craft, if it's like that simple. You're actually communicating with different, three different individuals or groups.
And for them to do that at that speed, to hit their points in perfect ratio, the golden ratio squared, is phenomenal. Like, I don't think the best fighter pilots in the world could arrange themselves between the observer and observed that quickly.
And we'll see in the next few slides why they communicated this information. It makes complete sense. It makes complete sense with these frequencies that they've been using and we've been using for initiating contact and these harmonics.
But you're also talking about like you're saying speed, and I'm wondering because there's this concept that says they are not actually moving in space the way we think of it.
There's what I think is going on, Kerry, is time dilation. I'll give you an incredible example. Have you seen the movie? It just came out, Aerial Phenomenon.
I don't know.
Aerial Phenomenon is about the South African schoolyard case, and
no, I guess not.
God, they've been making this film for years because it has the Harvard psychiatrist, I'm just trying to remember his name, John Mack, in the film, and who did a personal investigation into these kids. And at the end, and near the end of the film, the kids are all saying the same thing. When they got close to the craft, the ET man was moving in slow motion forward and backwards, and it really freaked them out. And the craft itself it's like it was traveling within a wavelength, and 1 minute was here, 1 minute was there. So the fact that, see, imagine, I wrote a paper on time dilation when I was a physics student, when I was very young. But the point is, when two frequencies of time meet each other and they're different, there's a dilation between them, meaning they're not equal. So these things that appear super fast to us, from their perspective, may be going nice and slow, right? Whereas just like the slow moving ET, who looks like he's walking in slow motion back and forth to the schoolyard kids, he's living in a different time frequency than us. Yep. So when the two overlap, you get time dilation, meaning something could be going by you this fast and you don't even see it. Like, you can't, see a bullet going 700 miles an hour out of a handgun, 100 feet away from you. But if I take that bullet and I put a light on it and I put it, at the height of a jet, 30,000 feet, you can see something going by at 700 miles an hour. And it looks quite slow, actually, right? And it's the same thing if I take a meteorite which is way up in the upper atmosphere, and it's going 45,000 miles an hour and burning through the atmosphere, that's 45,000 miles an hour. Now, the closer that 45,000 an hour gets to us, you can't see it anymore. But a camera and radar can see it. And the Navy data suggests, again, these things, we have one set of radar data that says they're going 66 to 68,000 miles an hour when they drop from 80,000 feet to sea level in 0.78 seconds. That's how fast that is. And then Kevin Day and David Fravor say on this Netflix series that they got one on radar jumping 60 miles in 1 second. That's 216,000 miles an hour. And 216,000 miles an hour times an octave, which is 2, is 432,000 miles an hour. There you see that magic 432 again, which is the number Jimmy keeps getting. Plus, it's one of the 2 transmission frequencies and reception frequencies he's working with. So we're starting to see a picture. And as you get into the numbers, you're going to see a really clear picture, because the next thing Jimmy does, not only do we get all of these mathematical values to explain everything in physics coming in on the radios, he then starts to get a perfect formula of 144 to 432 and golden ratio to the location of every sacred site on Earth, every single one.
So we'll see.
Sorry about this, but I want to know if it's possible that we're actually talking about dimensions as opposed to, distance, like the way we think of it. So.
Oh, absolutely, Kerry. That's what I think everything is doing. I don't think nothing physically can move through the Earth's atmosphere at 68,000 miles an hour or 216,000 miles, because they'll incinerate. Nothing physical.
And the way you get something to move, in 60, you said 60, I don't know, whatever it was,
60 miles a second is 216,000.
That is, again, it could easily be dimensional, where there's no time lapse. I mean, and there may be something about the construction of the dimensions that does relate to this 432 hertz. In other words,
432,
a frequency issue, that why you're getting the same ratio is because you're going into a dimension, or the dimension's relationship to our dimension is always that. I don't know.
No, I think you're right on the right track, Kerry. That's where this is going. And where, if we had some really good mathematicians to work with us, even though Jimmy and I both know how to do the math, it's a matter of getting huge amounts of time. And you start to see the grid that Jimmy discovered, the actual Earth grid for every sacred site that's on the Earth. Again, when you understand time dilation, and you understand that time dilation refers to 2 separate dimensions in time, they don't have to be going 216,000 miles an hour. Those are a function of time and dimension, which means they don't physically have to be moving that fast through the atmosphere, which starts to give us the picture of what the Greek god Kronos may have done, is put the human civilization into a time dilation weapon. This is a hypothesis that I'm starting to create, looking at a lot of data. In the Apocrypha of John, otherwise known as the Secret Gospel of John, after this king of the demigods, who's very similar to Zeus, he probably is the same as Zeus, his name is Yaldabaoth, after he physically fashions the male and female human race, a higher function of God comes in and plants a luminous seed in the entire human race that he just created to be his subservient worker bee slaves, kind of like Sission's hypothesis. And because this luminous epinoia, as it's called, which means luminous thought in Greek, is planted in us, he gets so enraged that we will surpass him and all of his lowercase gods and goddesses. He casts us to the lowest region of matter itself. That's this is written in the Secret Gospel of John. And the lowest region of matter itself may be a time dilation weapon that threw us into time. And therefore, we think our universe is 13 billion years old, according to our calculations, but it really isn't. We're trapped in time. And that's why what interests me about the aerial case of the kid seeing the ET and he's walking back and forth in what looks like slow motion running to them. Right. And these super fast, what you just saw with Jimmy's, these 3 UFOs will appear in the golden ratio, and he's got it repeated multiple times, at least 5 or 7 times, which means this isn't chance. They're giving us the same message, but they're moving into position like that and they're gone. Boom, boom, boom. And the Navy pilot data is like boom, boom, boom. So you have 2 extremes of your time dilation spectrum. You have super slow, and you have super fast, and we're somewhere in the middle.
But that might be an illusion. So I'm thinking that if you've got a different dimension and it's actually, it's here all the time, right? But like that guy that you were saying, looks like he's walking in slow, he's clearly in the other dimension. He's not.
That's what I mean. Here. That's what I mean. Exactly.
Through a veil. It's a veil. It's like it's a frequency veil, and
a veil is a frequency. Exactly.
What they do say that is what the Anu and Enlil put in. I have always called it a frequency fence in our brains. That's what they did, was put that in place. In other words, they didn't have to do anything in the physical world. They just did it inside our heads, to the way that they put in this frequency fence in our DNA, and that is what causes this lack of ability to see into the other dimensions. For example, like it's a veil. We call it a veil. Yeah.
So if your brain could produce, so if your brain's a camera.
And by the way, Ashana Dean says that veil is now, it's basically dispelling. And that's why you guys are getting what you're getting. And we're getting closer and closer to being able to see through all the dimensions and understand what we're really part of, as opposed to this kind of fantasy land that we think we're in.
See, I think you're right, Kerry. Frequency and time, I mean, this is the paper I wrote on time dilation when I was a student, are proportional. So if you're operating at a higher frequency, you're going to get, for example, let's picture your brain like a camera. Like you watch movies, and we used to go to the movie theater, the camera was taking 24 frames per second, like 23.98 frames per second. You know why the brain loves that? Because it's a very relaxed frequency for the brain. So if you run your fingers across your eyes right now, my lights in this room are pulsing at 60 cycles a second. So I'm going to see a strobe trail, right? But I can do the same thing outside in the sun, that I won't see as many fingers in my strobe trail when I do this, but I'm missing a lot of data in between those little strobe trail fingers right now, right? So when the human brain doesn't function in brain waves much higher than super gammas, not much higher than 200 waves a second. That's really slow, by the way. So if I had a camera that could see 1,000 waves a second, it would experience more time than me, because I'm only getting, so my brain's only producing, when I'm relaxed, I'm right about the same as where we used to watch movies. Have you noticed that when you look at video that's 29 or 30 frames a second, it's a little bit irritating to the brain? And that's because when we're relaxed, we're not really vibrating that high. We're just a little bit shorter than that. So the 30 frames kind of irritates us. So that kind of gives you an insight into if a high frequency being comes in contact with a low frequency being, they're not going to see each other in time equally. In fact, they may go so far out of phase that they won't even see each other. They'll completely miss each other. Right.
Yeah.
So,
and it's all about.
Go ahead.
And you're right. I mean, it's all about frequencies and waveform. I mean, and we'll see in a few slides what these harmonics and this mathematics is really suggesting is that really we live in a holographic universe where everything is connected to every point in itself. And everything in this holographic universe is made of waveforms. Even the material world we live in, which we see as material, is also wave energy, vibrating at different frequencies. And these harmonics that we're touching upon, the harmonic 144, which we will see in a minute, 432, and the golden ratio, which is responsible for fractality in our universe, it seems to be really the ingredients that's driving everything in our material world. And there's a really compelling example in a few slides that will be able to demonstrate that. Okay, so I have a, if I can.
How much more
continue
time
here.
do we have, Kerry? I'm just trying to be aware of your time.
Yeah, I guess we're going for quite a while. I don't know if somebody could, because we had that late start, so I'm not sure if I need to.
I just want to know, because we can always go so far tonight and then do a pickup, a second one.
That might be the idea to do, because right now we're getting it's 8 in California. It's 8:38. What time? So theoretically, we started at 7, so it's about an hour and a half now. So we shouldn't go more than another maybe 20 minutes or so, because people's.
Okay, because Jimmy, don't worry, we can do a second part with Kerry and possibly a third.
Yeah,
so
and I do want to say one thing before we kind of move on, and then you can continue. There is you keep talking about people higher frequency being, but the reality is that we can go to a higher frequency. In other words, we have
absolutely
capability, and that's what some people might call ascension is, in essence, us being able to do that.
I totally agree with you. That's what the whole awakening is about, is literally vibrating at higher and higher frequencies. And you start to see the real universe as you get higher in frequency yourself. All of this stuff will make sense to you, to such a person.
Yeah, absolutely. So I do have
20 more minutes, Jimmy.
Okay, perfect. So it's perfect. We're going to cover part 2, and then we can have maybe part 3 and a next episode about the Earth grid and all the mathematics and everything. We can maybe do that another time. This is another example. I wanted to show a different example here. We saw earlier the golden ratio triangular craft. This example is a different sighting. And I have the video I'm going to show in a second here. And what's amazing about this sighting also is that it also contains mathematical information. In this case, the sighting revealed the harmonic 108. And this harmonic may not be known by everyone, but I do have a short video of 3 minutes roughly here that I could present to show the actual sightings. And then the explanation from an expert in sacred geometry about the meaning of harmonic 108, which is connected to the golden ratio as well. The infinite repeating pattern of the golden ratio is based on harmonic 108. So let me show the video here. And so I'm going to forward a bit. At the beginning, I was explaining what was happening. So this is a transmission that was happening towards Jupiter. So what we see here on the side are the antennas. It's at night. I didn't have the infrared camera on at the time, so we don't see the antenna that very clearly, but we see what's in front of us is Jupiter. And so this was a transmission towards Jupiter on November 25th, 2021. So here it is. Here's what took place. Let's make sure the volume is up. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
108 in a nutshell would be, it's the living mathematics of nature. It's our connection to the mysteries of the counter-rotating fields of pine cones, which have a numerical signature of 8 to 13. So you can see in the pine cone here it has 813, and that the ram's horn, the golden spiral, is also mathematically derived by the Fibonacci sequence. So I believe that the Fibonacci sequence is the key to all the mysteries of science. And when we apply what's called digital compression, where we keep reducing these big numbers of the Fibonacci sequence to single digits, it's called continued subtraction of 9, because 9 is the key, we end up with an infinitely repeating 24 code. And those 24 numbers of single digits, when you add them all up, add up to 108. So this thing called 108 became a Shri or Holy 108 because it's about an infinity connection that can be defined by recursion or repeatability. In a nutshell too, what I'm interested in is that to explore 108, we have to look deep into the mathematics of the pentacle, because when the five-pointed star, which is the mathematics of every protein in your body, means the Shri 108 connection has a connection to our cellular memory. So this is called fractal pent, when the pentacle reduces at the rate of 0.618, which is a golden ratio. And you can see here that I've written a 24 code. The wheel of 24 is the Fibonacci sequence that's been compressed down to single digits. And in a nutshell, 108 relates to the mysteries of our cellular memory and to the mathematics of nature. So the pentacle is a really important shape that we need to study in sacred geometry. And you can put the 108 code in a circle and you can see that the opposite points, 1 and 8 is 9. If you go through the center, 5 and 4 is 9. So it's a masterpiece of mathematical inquiry. And the reason we love it is because it's based to our connection with Mother.
So this is the part about 108, which is very important, which is also tied to our DNA. And I do have a slide actually here that I'd like to show, which links, here's the slide. So this slide is interesting because we see, for instance, from the cellular division itself, encodes the golden ratio and encodes harmonic 144 and encodes 108. If we look at this, how we will represent the cell division to the left, we see these two circles. So if we divide, for instance, this segment, the green segment, and we divide it by the red segment, we get the golden ratio. If we divide the red and green segment combined and we divide it by the blue segment, we get the golden ratio as well. So the cell divides really based on golden ratio proportion. I mean, that's how nature operates. This is how, all of fractality in our universe is based on golden ratios. And interestingly, when we take a cross-section of a DNA molecule, which we see here, it is a very famous picture that was taken a few years ago and made the cover page of different magazines. But that cross-section is fascinating because when we looked at the actual geometry of DNA cross-section here, we realized that there is a decagon included and there are 10 pentagons. And amazingly, interestingly, the inner angle of every side of this decagon is 144 degrees. And the degree and the angle of this pentagon is 108, harmonic 108. So this harmonic 108, harmonic 144, and the golden ratios are all part of our DNA, as we can see here on that picture. And this is going to lead, and we'll probably stop the slideshow here, but it's going to lead into the next section here as to what these harmonics and golden ratio, what they have to say in terms of their relationship with our universe, and how it explains almost everything. And over the last several weeks, and been doing this work and months, it's been just amazing to see how everything is connected to this. Even like if we look at even frequencies like the Schumann resonance, for instance, is completely tuned to this harmonic 144. We'll show mathematically how it is. The placements of the planets in our solar system are all golden ratio proportions, exact. The velocity of galaxies, clusters, circling or galactic disk, or the central sun, if you will, are all, I'm not say all, but the one that I calculated, if you look at the Milky Way itself and the Andromeda galaxy, for instance, they're all traveling at harmonic of 144 harmonic base velocity. It's all demonstrable mathematically, and that's going to be part of the last section, or the third part that we can cover next time.
And then the Earth grid, the point between the Great Pyramid and the North Pole to the targets of all of the sacred sites, including Rennes-le-Château, are functions of 144 and 432 and golden ratio as well.
And I can give a I can give a brief, just a quick view of it here. Go back to here. So if we look at the Earth grid, for instance, we realize that, and we're going to show that mathematically, that the Earth grid lattice, or the distance between the vortexes, if you will, are based on golden ratio times harmonic 144. And this is the unit we use, and we'll explain why next time, but we use that in nautical miles because the nautical mile system connects the distance in our physical world with geometry, right? Because there are 360 degrees in a circle, and there are 360 meridians circling the globe. So we use this essentially unit to match geometry. But when we calculate the equivalent distance in terms of, if we look at the golden ratio times harmonic 144, in terms of nautical miles, when we convert that into kilometers, amazingly, it adds up to 432 kilometers, which is again this 432 figure, which comes back again. And we'll see in some of the examples really that the vortexes on the planet, the ancient sites, are located very specifically on these grid lattices. And we can demonstrate that mathematically.
Now you're familiar with the scientist who did sort of his theory. I don't remember his name, but I think he was Australian, and he
he's talking Ginny, it's Bruce Cathy.
So he made a whole chart of where he thought UFOs had to use the grid to come in to our dimension.
Yes, Bruce Cathy is very known in harmonic mathematics. He's done tremendous work, and it's been a big inspiration. And the technique of converting, of using essentially the nautical miles to connect, the physical dimension in our world with geometry, because everything is based on geometry, was developed by Bruce Cathy. And similarly, the technique he used was to also convert the Earth time, which is based on 24 hours a day, convert that into a cosmic time, which is based on 27 hours instead of 24, because the moon cycle rotation period, it's all based on 27. Everything related to time is based on 27. The cosmic time is based on 27. So this technique was developed by Bruce Cathy and is used here to do that. What Bruce Cathy, was with all the credit that he deserved, the main thing that was missing in his work was the integration of the golden ratio to these harmonics. And that's what we're going to see here, the integration of the golden ratio. If we just take, for instance, I'm just going to give maybe that example as a teaser here. If we look at the great distance between the Great Pyramid of Giza and where the UFO landed in Rendlesham Forest, I got the coordinates from the book, and the part about the Earth grid and all that was done by Gary Osborne, who did tremendous work on this, great work on this. So now when we look, for instance, using this technique, if we look at the distance between the Great Pyramid and where this UFO landed, we have a distance of 1,864 nautical miles. Okay, so this essentially the grid reference point on the Earth grid is the Great Pyramid, obviously ground zero, if you will. And the distance is 1,864. Well, it just turns out that distance, and I'm going to show it there mathematically here, is exactly corresponding to 8 times golden ratio times harmonic 144. And I can show it on the calculator here, right? The golden ratio is 1.618, and we multiply by 8, a perfect, harmonic, and we multiply by the harmonic 144. And what we get is 1863.9, which is, if we round it, we get 1864. So the accuracy is to the dot. So these lattices on the Earth grid being golden ratio times 144 harmonic proportions, we can predict using this technique where the sacred, or why these ancient sacred sites are built at these specific locations and why there are vortexes of energy at these locations. Based on the book, and I didn't read all the book, but the part that I read about this UFO, apparently when Jim Peniston was under hypnosis, he mentioned that the UFO had landed at this specific location because it was auto-repairing. There was probably some kind of technical issue of some sort, I don't know, but what says in the book is that the UFO or the craft was auto-repairing at that location. And it's kind of very interesting that this location is exactly where a vortex of energy will be located based on this proposed formula that I'm advancing here today.
Yeah,
And this happens.
Sorry, go ahead.
This happens repeatedly. We did it with Rennes Le Chateau. Jimmy's done it.
I have it here actually. I have a picture about Rennes Le Chateau. So here it is. So you can see the same, using the same strategy, if you will. So we calculate this time the distance between the Rennes Le Chateau and the Great Pyramid of being ground zero. And we realize that the distance is exactly the 11th harmonic of the harmonic 144. So I will do it here just to show, again, the mathematic that I'm not making this up here. So if we take 11 times 144, we get 1584, which is exactly to the dot distance between the Great Pyramid and Rennes Le Chateau. Again, an harmonic 144.
Okay, now before we end, I just want to tell you guys something, because last night, so let's see, do I want to continue? This will stop. Yeah, I think I'll just do this. I just want to do this quickly. Last night, I had on a guy who I think you guys should be working with. His name is John Michel Fanuzzi. This is the first interview. He did actually another interview with you, David, so you know him, right?
Oh, of course, yeah, I know John Fanuzzi, yeah.
So he is actually using all of the same thing, you know, and he's doing all this kind of work. And, you know, so we went through this entire, not everything because it's vast, but this is, a, you know, he's done all this same work that you're doing, in essence, you know, figuring out all of this stuff with mathematics. And he, as it happens, and I'm just going to stop sharing, and you can bring your thing back on.
I could probably share tonight's presentations with John, and then.
Yeah, because there might be some correspondences that, you know, new things that he can, because he is also very interested in how his work connects to ascension.
Right. Yeah. And he understands the math very well. That's good. Those are the kind of people we need. I think we're starting to see with the Earth grid and the frequencies and the numbers coming in on the radios, again at 144.1 megahertz and also at 432 megahertz. We're starting to see a grid that is not a grid it's a frequency node point grid. It's almost like they're showing us harmonic frequency ratios of how this dimension interfaces with higher and even lower dimensions.
Exactly.
It's like a big music scale, and there's ways to come in on certain frequencies and leave at others, and inversely. So we're starting to figure out how these craft are doing it.
Yeah, and that's why they travel from portal to portal. And we have even I took a stab at the Skinwalker Range, was very interested to see if we use the same mathematic, what we're getting. And amazingly, same story again, the Skinwalker Range, the distance between Skinwalker Range and the Great Pyramid is 6,060 nautical miles. And we get exactly that distance with 26 times golden ratio times harmonic 144 at 99.97% accuracy. And I found quite interesting, it's a gentleman that texted me today asking if I was aware of because apparently when they have this high strangeness happening at Skinwalker Range, apparently they are detecting radio emission at 1.6 gigahertz. And I think there are new episodes now out there. I haven't watched them, but so when he texted me that, I was curious to do the math on it. If we use the same technique here, and if we use the harmonic 144 in terms of gigahertz, and we convert that from Earth time to cosmic time, again using the same strategy to connect these dimensions to geometry, we get exactly 1.62, which match this 1.6 gigahertz that they've been reporting. So I'm going to do it here on a calculator. So we take 1.44 gigahertz being the harmonic of the Earth grid, if you will, that resonates to, and we multiply by the cosmic time, which is based on number 27, and we divide by the Earth time, which is based on 24, to do the conversion, and you get 1.62 gigahertz. So it's kind of fascinating that they're reporting this radio emission at 1.6 gigahertz. It seems like that radio emission is actually a trace of the harmonic 144, which is the fundamental harmonic of light. That's probably driving this.
Right, it's not because the speed of light is equal to 432 times 10 to the 5th over 144.1. So we're starting to see the structure of the harmonic field. And then you're going to know how they're doing it. And then eventually somebody can take this math and then we can inversely do it.
At this vortex, at this location of energy vortex, that's where, in theory, we could harness free energy because you can produce gravity harmonics at these locations. And that's why all these ancient sites, I have the integratron here, is the same story. This is again located on a perfect harmonic 28 times golden ratio times harmonic 144 at 99.92% accuracy. That will explain why this location was specifically chosen. The Nimitz, we talk about the Nimitz incident, right, near Catalina Island. If we do the math using the same strategy, it's exactly 46 times harmonic 144 and 99.99%.
Yeah, and that's in the new film Terror in the Sky. Kerry, you're probably going to want to interview this guy, David Mason.
Yeah, I would like.
Who's in that film? I'm in contact with David. I can put him in touch with you.
Okay, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, and that's Jimmy's right.
What's the name of the film?
It's called A Terror in the Sky. It's Caroline Corey's film. And she gets, David Mason is using hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of equipment and better FLIR cameras than the military uses on the jets. I did an interview with him today. And I could send you the interview I did with him today, and then I can give you his contact information for your audience.
All right.
And wow, what they find watch A Terror in the Sky, because it's going to correspond with Jimmy's work and my work perfectly.
Okay, cool.
Perfectly. And John Panuzzi also. I think everybody should see that film. It's probably the best UFO actual data for the actual craft, along with what Jimmy's getting in the golden ratio formations that we have. The military is never going to share data like that with the public ever.
Yeah, exactly. I'd like to show maybe one more slide here. There's a lot here, but one thing, which is, in terms of practical, what are the practical applications of this? If we look, for instance, if we use this strategy here that we looked at, if we ask ourselves why is during the spring equinox, and we have that, at Chichen Itza, for instance, this, it's very famous at the spring equinox. There's, so-called sun portals opening up. There's a lot of activity going on. And why is that, right? So why is that? Why is there a sun portal opening up at the spring equinoxes? So when we run the math and we look at it in the way that we're talking about here, the distance between the sun and the earth at the spring equinox is exactly 149,000.6 million kilometers, right? So when we convert that into the nautical miles, again, which is the measurement unit we use to connect to geometry, in terms of nautical miles, this is equal to 80.78 millions of nautical miles. So that's the distance between the sun and the earth at the spring equinox moment. Now, this distance, amazingly, is exactly equivalent to 50 golden ratio, as we can see here. And I'm going to do it on the screen, so it's, you can see I'm not making this up. So we take the golden ratio, we're 1.618, and we multiply by 50, we get 80.9, and 80.9 is what we see here, you see? So at the spring equinox, the sun distance to the Earth is exactly 50 golden ratio. This in turns can be expressed in terms of harmonic. 50 golden ratio is equivalent to 144 times golden ratio divided by 2.88, and 2.88 you divide by 2, you get again 1.44, this famous harmonic. So it means that there's a spring equinox, the sun and the Earth are in perfect harmony, and the sun itself is in perfect harmony with the Earth grid itself, which is probably why these portals are opening up at this specific time.
Yes, but also the 50 is the pentagram again.
Yes,
So
yeah, exactly.
That relationship may also relate directly to man, what we call man, humans. So the 5.
Yes.
And the 50 states in the United States. So it's
right. So in a sense, those, and it's also protective, So it's
yeah. The pentagram is the pentagram is the Earth Venus, because Earth and Venus form a pentagram in their orbits every 8 years. So that's in Henry Lincoln's work in the Holy Place on Rennes le Chateau, his last work just before he died. It's interesting because I got this intuitive message: go buy all Henry Lincoln's books and reread them again. So I went on Amazon and I bought Holy Blood, Holy Grail, Blood Wine in the Holy Place. And he dies 5 days later. There's the number 5, right? Because 5 is the pentagram. And the whole book is about the number 5 in the end, and the pentagram and the Earth-Venus connection. So it's amazing how the universe works. You hear this voice.
Yeah, and all this is connected.
5 days later.
And all this also amazingly, I just want to show maybe on the last slide. Well, this explains also the velocity of galaxies. We see here, these galaxies are moving in space at perfect harmonic of 144, which is fascinating. Like the Milky Way is at 288 nautical miles per grid second or cosmic second. Obviously, 288 to divide by 2, you get exactly 144 to the dot.
Which is a musical
octave. The Andromeda galaxy is exactly traveling at 144 nautical miles per cosmic second. It's fascinating. The Pleiades, the cluster, 2.88, again, a pure harmonic. We have the planet placements also. If we do this calculation, I found that the average distance of these planets, because they don't always have obviously circular orbit, some are elliptical orbit around the sun, but the average distance of these planets to the sun, if we look at these 5 planets, are exactly golden ratio proportion. So in the case of Venus, it's at 36 times golden ratio proportion at 99.95% accuracy. The Earth is 50 golden ratio. We just saw it from the spring equinox. And Mars, 75, Jupiter, 260, and Pluto. Very high accuracy. If we see here in terms of, the red here, this is the accuracy we're looking at. So this is fascinating.
Yeah.
And we should go, we should probably, I think we should end the time, Kerry.
Yeah.
You can see there's a part 2 and part 3 here.
Okay.
So let us know when you want to continue with this.
Yes. Okay. So, we'll get our schedules together and figure all that out. But it's been great, and I'll try to get this out quickly. And thank you so much for being on the show. It speaks for itself. It's fascinating, and thank you guys, because I think this is, in a sense, this is a way of having our own disclosure that actually proves the point. And so you're not needing to necessarily have an alien walk up to you in order to know that this whole thing there's a relationship and there's a communication happening as well.
There's real communication. Yeah, that's why you got to see A Terror in the Sky and the aerial phenomenon with John Mack in the story.
It's customized too, because if we look, I was working on the harmonic 144 and 432, and the ingredient that was missing in the formula was the golden ratio, the integration of the golden ratio, which I had not integrated into that. And after seeing this golden ratio triangular craft 3 times I clicked, I said, wait a minute here, that makes sense, right? The fundamental
they're hitting
harmonic
over the head with it.
combined to the golden ratio, which drives all fractality of the universe, just makes sense. And when I plugged it in the formula and tried this with the Earth grid and everything else, it's just everything fell into place. So it was kind of really amazing. So
Lovely.
well, thank you, Kerry, for the opportunity. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Time. Thank you,
Thank
Jimmy.
you. That's great work, guys. Really.
All right. We'll see you next time.
Thank you, Kerry. See you next time.
All right.
Okay.
Bye.